Hi. Hi, Mahesh. I'm so sorry. Like, I'm quite new to Clubhouse. I
All
don't
right.
really know the
No problem.
things. It took me a while to just figure out how this thing works. But
Okay,
but
okay.
anyway, yeah.
All right.
Hi.
It's okay. So what we basically do is that we have been conducting these sort of sessions for students. So this is we have our Monday to Friday regular sessions, and then we also do conduct some sort of student extracurricular activities, and we chose Clubhouse to be our discussion platform. So
Right.
most of us are yeah, we have been using Clubhouse since a while, even though it
Okay.
was really hard for us to figure out how the things worked and all that. But right now we are
Right.
pretty comfortable with it. It's a really interesting platform. I think we can learn a lot from a lot of people, and because a lot of people are already on Clubhouse and they are starting rooms and they are discussing a lot of things. So
Right.
we thought this will be a really interesting platform to introduce students to prominent industry professionals, and let them share their experiences and they can actually learn. So there are a couple of things that we cannot share in a curriculum, right? So this
Right.
is going to be and all these sessions like that we had has been very productive, and the guests were like very generous to share their experiences, and they are in touch with the students via LinkedIn and all that, and they're helping out the students a lot. So
Right.
thank you so much for coming, and uh, it's I know that how busy you are, but taking this time and coming here to address the students, I'm really, really, really thankful for that. And
No, no. Yeah.
yeah, so let's start with some of your basic. I mean, can you just brief us about your journey so far? Like, where did you start, and then where are you right now at this point of your career?
Cool. All right. So thanks for having me, and it's quite cool to see new ways of learning. I think when I was in college, we didn't have anything that was so interesting. But anyway, so I've studied visual communication, and then I also studied photography, and I actually started out my career as a photo editor. Photo editor meaning not somebody who is manipulating images, not in that way, but as a photo editor for a media organization. That means picking up the right image for a particular article, etc. At AOL. That's how I know Mahesh as well. But so after that, I started freelancing as a photojournalist. So I work with travel magazines and newspapers, national, international newspapers and magazines, etc., for nearly a decade. Then down the line, like somewhere, I also started to do videos, and this was after I studied. Again, I went about studying multimedia journalism, and I was introduced to this world of visual storytelling through the medium of videos. Because also the industry was making that transition, like everybody was doing everything. So a print organization, a print media was also making videos. They were also like photographers were also writing articles. They were also making videos. So that was a kind of a transition that was happening in the industry at that time. So I kind of like made that transition as well. So that was quite a paradigm shift for me. And yeah, so I've been doing that now for some years. Now I've been making documentary films as well. I've just my last documentary, like I think my 13th or 14th documentary was broadcast last year, and just recently I had a screening as well at the Indian Photography Festival. And finally, right now, I've actually come full circle back to a university. So I'm at the University of Bern right now in Switzerland. I'm doing some research with social anthropology. And that is essentially to ground my work in the scientific language and methods. So that I mean, so I continue to do my documentary filmmaking, photography, etc. But I'm also just learning some science by the on the side. So yeah, so that is me and my career in short.
That's quite a journey. And yeah, as I said, we actually met in AOL. So,
Yeah,
so one point that you said, and this is something that I usually often say to all the students about that multi-hyphenate careers, right? So, that way or that method of specializing in something is actually sort of gone, that way of working. You have to actually be good at a lot of things, or you have to explore a lot of
yeah,
things to maybe to proof yourself, like especially when the pandemic hit us. A lot of people have
yeah,
lost jobs, especially as you said, the print media. There was a huge decline in print sales and things like that. Print marketing and everything came down. And then those people had to actually switch to digital media and things like that. So you have actually did this much, before any of us, I guess. So that you have switched, you have explored your career options, and you worked on photography, filmmaking, and all those things. Now,
yeah.
one question is that when did you exactly develop a passion towards photography? Like, when did you start um, having that? Was it always there, or who introduced you to the world of photography?
Okay. So I've actually I never thought that I'd be a photographer or filmmaker or any of that. In fact, I when I was a child, I actually thought I would grow up into a tiger. Like, I was a fan of Jungle Book, and I thought I could grow up to be Sher Khan. And then my sister broke it to me that, like, oh no, you'll grow up into a human being, so it's not really, tiger's not an option. So I didn't really I was not very ambitious kind of a child. I was not too good with studies, I would say. um I mean, I wasn't bad, but I was not like, the first in class or anything. I was a very average child, and with very moderate ambitions. And then I actually studied, I even opted for visual communication because in some film that I saw, some Tamil film that I saw, the heroine was studying mass communication. So I told my father that, oh, there is this, I don't want to do like this courses that everybody else is doing. I want to do something new. And at that time, it was new. This was in the early 2000s. And I said that I want to study visual communication, and that's how I was introduced to the world of visual medium. Uh, in visual communication, in my bachelor's course, photography was one of our subjects, and I had this sort of natural inclination, actually not just towards photography, but also to short filmmaking. But photography was a much more, or it seemed like photography was a much more practical profession that I can get into, because it you can also work without a team, right? Like, as a photographer, like for if you want to be a director, or if you want to be a filmmaker, you need to work with a team. You need to have like fancier gadgets, etc. So at that point, photography seemed feasible, and it was something that I was naturally leaning towards. And that's how I chose photography. Um, and then I found this institute called Light and Life Academy in Ooty, and I think that was one of the best things I did, because it gave me a very good grounding in photography. Yeah.
Right, right. So, this is something about your work. Like, I have been following your work. I've been seeing this in Instagram and Facebook and all those things. So you're a narrative photographer, is what I just get, because every photograph that you're taking, always told a story. The story was the priority there, and but at the same time, it had an aesthetic, elegance to it. I mean, it was aesthetically beautiful, but at the same time, you actually told a very powerful story through your imagery. So how do you actually balance storytelling and aesthetics? What is your process in that, or what is your approach there? How did you develop that particular style? Because your style is very unique, and I haven't seen many photographers, especially in India, who actually ventures into that kind of photography. So how did you develop that style for yourself?
Okay. So the narrative was is something that I still struggle with, to be honest. With photography, also, it is incredibly difficult for two reasons, I would say. That first of all, in practice, if you're a professional photojournalist in India, the your opportunities to publish narratives is very, very, very less. In practicality, most of the time, what you do is take pictures to illustrate somebody else's story. So, you have a writer, writing something about some issue or telling a story, and then you are commissioned to take pictures to depict that. So in that sense, you are not really, it's not your narrative, it's somebody else's narrative, and they would have already identified elements, like, I mean, it's you can think of it like a scene from a film, right? A scene is composed of different frames that illustrate what's going on in that scene, and it's the stringing of that those scenes, those frames, that brings out that story in that scene, right? So something similar is what we generally end up doing with photography. But when you are left to your own devices, like, say, for example, I'm trying to do a story on my own. Now that's a very different ball game, because you don't have a writer or an editor telling you this is the story, these are the pictures that we need, or they may not tell you these are the pictures that we need, but then they have a story identified, they have the important elements identified, all of that is handed out to you in a platter. But when you are trying to do it by yourself, it's quite hard. And also because we have such limited opportunities in India to publish photo stories by ourselves, that kind of practice is also very, very less. But then I soon realized, because I wanted to work with international media organizations early on. I realized in the international scene, you to have this sort of narrative skill was very, very important. For them, that was more important, more so than the aesthetics. And now aesthetic skills are more or less, it's also not easy, but like, it's not I think that was easier for me personally, because I also went to Light and Life Academy, and there Muhammad Iqbal sir was the dean at the time, and he's very good with aesthetics, etc. So you learn all these, compositions, this, that, all of that at the school. So it was more or less easy. The important part for me was the unlearning of all those lessons. So there's a kind of an unlearning of the aesthetics that you have to go through as well. You have to unlearn what you learned at school, and then kind of develop your own style, your own voice, to suit the narrative that you are building. So that is a process, to be honest. And again, that process depends a lot on how you tell a story, what you tell about a story, um, and whether you're able to identify those elements in the story, and take the pictures accordingly. So for me, I think I think videos help me a lot, because with pictures, it is hard. It is very hard, and especially if you are trying to tell a story with just 12 images, it's incredibly hard to string a story together. At least it is for me. But with video, we have more tools, let's say. We have audio interviews, we can have a voiceover, we can have, various scenes. And it's also videos a bit more forgiving in terms of, aesthetics. Like if you're trying to do a photo essay on something, then all your 12 images or 15 images or even 20 images have to be really impeccable, right? Because like a person can see every aspect of the frame clearly, and it's you can't really get away with it. But like video, these moments are fleeting. It kind of like passes by in a second, and you can kind of get away with not so nice scenes as well, frames as well. But I think I learned storytelling more through videos, and I think that was a lesson. I wish I started much earlier, but I didn't. But anyway, I think, yeah, and at some point I also decided that for me personally, content was far more content, or the story was far more important than the aesthetics. I don't, although I think for the audience, form is more important than the content, but for me personally, content is more important than form. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, definitely yes. So that makes a lot of sense as well. So because what I was also thinking the same thing, like there is a that you need to strike that balance, especially when you're working with narrative photography. You cannot give more importance to the aesthetics because that will actually, the narrative will get lost in that. So you have to find your own style and you have to be truthful to the story that you're saying. And coming to
Yeah,
your
yeah, totally.
filmmaking, filmmaking, part of it. I have been observing, I've been watching a lot of your videos recently, and I've noticed a distinct style there also because you have this, Werner Herzog vibe in your filmmaking, in your films, where it is not just the traditional, interview B-roll, that style of narrative, but there is a lot of there is an organic flow there. There is very raw uses of sound and visuals and framing and the way that you actually compose the shots and everything. It has a very very powerful feeling to that, and it's not easy. I mean, even in India, I think documentaries are not given the importance that it actually deserves. Now, in a couple of articles that I've heard about, you have been called a conservation filmmaker. So, what exactly is a conservation filmmaker? And also, when you're working on this style, did you actually get inspired by a filmmaker to bring in this style into your filmmaking, or is this also the same thing that you have said, like you had to unlearn a lot of things and you started building your own visual language in filmmaking?
Cool. Very, very good question, because I don't know what conservation filmmaker is myself. That actually was a name that I think in during the pandemic, or maybe even a little bit before that. When people invite me for talks, they just like, gave this name. Because I think also it was because I was being invited to give a lot of talks in these wildlife and conservation platforms, which is, traditionally occupied by wildlife photographers and filmmakers. You don't really normally see, people like me. I mean, I'm not a wildlife photographer or a wildlife filmmaker, in the sense that I don't make natural history films. So I think it came because of that, because they the organizers had to put me in some box, right? They had to give a tag, a category, or a name, and sort of like, so that the audience knew or understand why I'm relevant to that event. And that's how this word came about, and that I think it's stuck also. Although you'll see, I have not used that word to describe me myself anywhere. I don't call myself a conservation anything. I don't even call myself environmentalist or nothing. I mean, these are all like names that other people give me. I just call, I identify myself as a filmmaker. That's about it. Filmmaker, photographer, even researcher. That is, it's essentially what I do. But the other tags are what people give me. So yeah, so that is about the tag. But I think what they mean to say is that um, I've also asked them why they have called me conservation filmmaker. So their answer was that they see me as this person who is more inclined towards raising awareness about conservation issues. So therefore, they put me in that sort of category. And like I said, because I don't make these natural history films, so yeah, so that's how it. And I'm very particular also. I think in some places people call me as wildlife filmmaker and wildlife photographer, etc. And then I have to kind of like write to them, because I get all these mails also asking, because people get this they have this misconception that I'm a wildlife filmmaker or photographer, and then they want to work with me, etc. And then I have to write to these organizers or journalists or whoever has written and say like, no, but I'm not a wildlife photographer, filmmaker. I don't make these natural history films. And even with conservation, I personally feel that the kind of stories that I tell, it's not a story that only environmentalists or conservationists should do. Like these are issues which all of us have to care about. It's really relevant to our survival now. Like it's not a optional subject that you could take an interest on. So yeah, so that's with tags. um, and then what was the second question? I'm sorry, Mahesh, I kind of lost track.
No, no, this is really a good point. Like I was also wondering what is conservation filmmaker, but it makes sense now. Now, yeah, the second part of the question was about the style of filmmaking that you have developed. It is very different from the usual documentaries that actually come out here, because I told you there is a different way that you are building your narratives, you know, in your film. So, is it the same way that you created your own language for photography? Did you actually come up with your own style for documentary filmmaking, or was it a natural thing that, you sort of evolved into the same thing, that you were using in photography?
Yeah, got it. I think with the films that I've been making, it's mostly they're all like the results of the constraints that we are working with. Honestly, it is they're all products of our constraints, not really not really like a product of an evolutionary process. Or I mean, I guess both are not mutually exclusive, but like I'm at least it's not a conscious decision, or a conscious effort to create a certain style. So mostly what I create is the films that I do are for specific purposes, right? Like so uh, they would either be for like it's for broadcast. It's meant for television broadcast, or I mean that's where it's going to be distributed, or it is for some kind of like an exhibition space, and they want these videos to kind of like be testimonials to whatever issue that we are showing, etc. So there are like specific formats within which I'm working. And television documentaries, a television format is a very difficult, I would say, like a difficult format to work with, because if you want to do like a easy, shoot like in couple of days and be done with it and don't really care about the outcome kind of a approach, then television journalism is quite nice and easy to do. Uh, but I have a problem with that. Like I'm not really. It doesn't make me happy, to do like these fast stories, because I like to take my time. I like to do a lot of research. Then I like to spend a lot of time wherever I'm filming, and you make these you build these relationships with these people on the ground. And then I don't want to do just a fast story. I want to kind of like do the best I can within that television format. um, and then you have the television format, which is you need that beginning, middle, end. You need proper closure. You do need talking heads. You need a balanced view of everything. It could be self narrative, but like if it is not narrated well, which is a very hard thing to do in India, because we are, I think, as generally, like culturally, we are not really taught to advertise ourselves, or like we are not really taught to speak for ourselves. This is not a training we generally get, and especially not in rural India. So because most of my stories are set in rural India, to get people there to tell their own, to articulate their stories well, is very very hard. So most often it becomes a voiceover. My films will have a voiceover, and that's what will narrate the story. So all of these things are there. And I have like an additional, a small requirement which I keep in my mind always, that at the very least, the film should be interesting for me to watch it, right? Now I'm a very lazy person, so unless something is really told well, it's told in an interesting manner, or the subject matter is so interesting that even if the documentary is boring, I will still watch it. If I have to meet at least one of these categories, so then I'm happy. And then I have in-home editor, like approval officer, which is my mother. And I always I have done this, like even when I was doing photography also, I kind of show my work to my mother, my father, and now my husband also. I kind of show them. I think it is important that our work need to be seen by people who are not in this profession, and if it's interesting to them, and if they are able to follow what you're talking about, and they're really engaged with the content, then that's good enough for me. Then that is my that is the point where I start or stop, like, so that I decide, okay, this is working now, this format or this story is working now. And then if I have to fight with my editor, then I do that. But then I know, okay, this is what I'm going to fight for, like, this much I'm confident this will work, and this I have to fight for. Whatever films I have made so far, and whatever style I have come up with, it's a result of that process. And it's not really consciously done in one way or the other. It's just a product of all my constraints.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Now, for all of us to understand the nature of films that you are making, can you talk a bit about your recent film, When Ice Melts? So, what is it about, and how did you actually approach the subject? Can you just brief us about that?
Sure, sure. So when the ice melts, it's about climate change, and how climate change is affecting people in this village in Ladakh, and what they were doing to mitigate. the effects of climate change. That film, uh, it came about because of another story that I did, which was about lake pollution in Bangalore. So 99% of my of the films that I do, or the subjects that I pursue, are all subjects that I'm personally interested in, and these are results of simple conversations that we have in our family or with friends. For example, in Bangalore, like we used to like look at our RO, and we used to see that, like, as the years go by, the hardness of the water was increasing. And you're living in the same place, you have the same water connections, and the water is just getting harder. And then this question comes, okay, so where is the water coming from? Okay, you have a bore well, you have corporation water, but where is it? And what is the water reserve that we have? Is everything coming from Kaveri? Well, all these kind of questions, they're very basic questions, right? um, you have to ask, where is this water that you are drinking in your house? Where is it coming from? How is it being preserved? How is it sustainable? So these are like very basic questions, and I started with that, and that led to the story about Bangalore's lake pollution. And I did that, and then after doing that story, of Bangalore's lakes, I sort of like started thinking about what is the water situation for India, like, as a, where is all this water coming from? So you have the lakes, you have rivers, but what is the ultimate source of all these lakes? Sorry, rivers. And that kind of like lead you to the glaciers, right? Like in the Himalayas, that's where all our water is coming from. So, or at least most of the water is coming from. So then I came across this article about Sonam Wangchuk, and these ice stupas that he was building. um, Now, ice stupa is a kind of an artificial glacier that helps them store water during winter, because Ladakh is essentially a desert. It's a high altitude desert. So during summer, they don't have much water. And in the winter, they don't do farming, but they have like a lot of water that kind of melts and is sort of essentially it just goes into the sea. So he had figured a way to kind of store it like a fridge, in this time of winter, so that they can use some of this water during summer for their farming. Now, I mean, the concept of the glacier, artificial glacier, is not new in Ladakh. It's been there since the 10th century or something. And there was also this guy called Iceman of India. He also had a different kind of artificial glacier. He had also designed a different kind of glacier, and that wasn't as effective as Ice Stupa. And Sonam Wangchuk is now very famous with this design and stuff, right? So I started looking at all the literature that was written about Ice Stupa and Sonam Wangchuk and everything. Also, like, if you guys have seen Three Idiots, Amir Khan's character is based on Sonam Wangchuk's life. And I thought, like, okay, so I'll read about what was happening, and then I also saw some videos, etc. But the thing was, nobody was asking the most important question, which to me was, is this ice stupa enough? Will this actually work? You know, I think that question was kind of largely left unanswered. All the films or articles and everything was just like sort of singing praises about ice stupa. It was so it was sort of like trumpeted like the solution for climate change, which it is not. It is a mitigation measure, and also it is a mitigation measure only until the water is left. So if these glaciers are also not like, it's not going to last forever. It's also going to get over. So I pitched the story, and then I went there. I didn't know what to expect. It took me a long time to even get access to Sonam and his team, etc., for whatever reasons. But finally, I got access, and then we went there and met the people there. And that was also another thing that I had with the people out there. Sorry, with the films that was already made about Ice Stupa. The actual people, the villagers, were never shown in these films. I'm like, okay, you're talking about people not having water, then I also want to see them, right? I want to see them. I want to see what their lives are like, how are they affected, etc. So I want to know that as well. So yeah, so we went there, met people, and yeah, and we made that film, When the Ice Melts. Please go watch it. It's on YouTube as well. um, yeah, so that's how it came about.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. So this actually, one, makes me want to ask you another question. So, you've been working in a corporate, culture. I mean, we have been in AOL and all. There is a comfort zone that, we were always sitting there and we were working on photos. And um, but when it comes to your current journey, right, be it film or photography or whatever projects that you're taking up, there is no comfort zone. Every
Yeah,
project is a different terrain. Everything is a different story. There are different
yeah.
people. And how are you managing that? I mean, what are the practical challenges that you have to face on this particular path right now?
um right now it is I think the most stress that I've had is after I quit AOL, I think, because it's like, plunging into cold water um, right away. So that was hard. I think as a photographer, it is very hard because the industry is so competitive, and the pay is not so good that you can take breaks, etc. Even if you can take breaks also, it's very easy to be forgotten. I think that is the most scary thing about photojournalism as a profession. It's not even about money. You I guess you could live with less or more. That is secondary. uh, to get started is one is the first roadblock, to get editors to trust you and give you that first assignment. And if you're good at what you do and you're dependable and they can trust you, usually work will follow, more work, because one thing editors don't like is risk. They do not like risk, and once they feel that you can be trusted, they will keep calling you back. So that is one thing. But the second thing is, if you are not available, say, like, you say, you need a break, or you're not well, or your sister is getting married, etc., they will say, okay, they will go to the next photographer, and they might do that once more or maybe twice. That's it. If you say no 2 3 times in succession, the chances of them calling you back again is very very low. That's just the sad truth of the industry. um so, and especially I was also at a disadvantage because I was in Bangalore. I'm from Kerala, and if I was in Kerala, it would have been even more harder. At least Bangalore is somewhere in the radar, and you have to also remember that a lot of these organizations are headquartered in Bombay or Delhi. So you're not in their immediate vision. Like, I mean, photographers there are go to their offices and they're meeting their editors, etc. And they have this sort of personal relationship with them. So I don't have a personal relationship with any of these people, and I'm not really socially hanging out with them. I'm not socially connected, etc. So the only thing that can speak for myself was my work. And I slogged for many years, like, yeah, and I think I was on a very unsustainable role also. because at one point I was doing about 200 assignments a year. So can you imagine, like, so that means, like, I was literally working every day, like without a break. So, like, you go shoot, come back, you edit, file it, again you go for the next shoot. So it was like that, and it was, honestly, it was not sustainable at all. Like, my health broke down. And you're not going to be young forever, so it's not really sustainable. And then also, I realized that, and by then I had also studied multimedia journalism. And also I did underwater photography. I had learned underwater photography. I learned scuba diving. I learned some bits of surfing. I learned to climb. All of this was just to be on top of my game, because it was just so competitive, like I said. uh, and yeah, and it was very hard. And then my health broke down, and then also I realized at all this costs, my there was I didn't have a voice. Because again, I was telling my story. My pictures were essentially illustrations of somebody else's story, and I felt that videos was a better way of finding that voice, to tell the stories that I cared about, not what some journalist in New York or London thought was important. So I made that transition to video as well. Once I started video, it was much better, because also I was because video takes so much more time in terms of research and production and post production, etc. I was also forced to scale back on my photo assignments. And I think that was a good thing. Now looking back, that was a very good thing. Finally I was like, okay, I can say no, I don't need this, and I can focus on videos. And yeah, videos, it's been easier in terms of stress. It's much in terms of job security, videos are much better. But it's stressful in another way, like, writing a script and the production and all of that. It's stressful in another way. But yeah, like, you don't have to kind of like keep constantly running. Yeah. So yeah, and now I'm also moving into a more even a slower pace. I want to do more scientific research in within the subjects that I'm doing, and visual anthropology, etc. So I'm going trying to move into a more slower pace. And in all of this, I think you don't, when you're running from pillar to post, what happens is also you don't focus on your personal projects. You're constantly worried about assignments, commissions, and it's one rat race, really. Like, it's not worth it. If there are students here and looking at doing stuff, I would say, like, really slow down, take breaks, think for yourself, find your own stories, develop your personal voice, because that's what will pay off in the longer run. Yeah.
Cool, cool. So, yeah, so this is, we are actually talking about the practical challenges. So now, a completely different challenge when you're a person from India, right? As you mentioned it earlier as well. So India is still very young at accepting women
Sir, so
in, hello?
sorry to cut you off. Ma'am just left, I guess. She's disconnected.
Okay. Um,
No, I've
Are you?
logged back in. Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, okay, cool.
All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I was just talking about, in India, we are still very young at accepting women in creative domains. I mean, I would say any domains for that matter. But being an academician, I have heard a lot from my female students saying that despite their passion about, passion for medium, specific work like, art, photography, filmmaking, and things like that, they're often discouraged to follow it through, and they're forced to actually go into a different, career. So, What is your thought on this? How did you actually manage it personally? I mean, did you actually face any problems like that? And what would be your advice to the aspiring women right now in our group, um, to follow their passion, if they want to go into photography or filmmaking?
Okay. I think the first thing is to be really, really good at whatever you do. Um, Whether it's design or photography or filmmaking or whatever it is. So that is obviously the first step. Um, the second, I think, I know what you're saying. Like it is something that I had also, where it's not easy to be taken seriously. Initially in my career, I used to dress in a certain way, like, where I look older, I'd look more manly, I would look, whatever. I tried all that kind of stuff, because you're easily, very easily dismissed, especially if you're, like, young and just starting out. I've had I used to shoot for Forbes and Fortunes, and I've had CEOs, women CEO, complained to the photo editor, because because they thought that they've sent, like, some young student or something like that, like, for to take their portrait, which they find as, like, demeaning, or, like, so disrespectful of their status or position. And then, but the good thing was that I've had photo editors stand up for me and say, she is good. Just because she's young doesn't mean she's not good, and just because she's a woman doesn't mean she's not capable. So I've had male photo editors stand up for me, because they have seen my work, they have not let them down. So these things take time, and the initial breaks are also hard, but really, I think, if you have a very strong portfolio, and you should have a strong portfolio, you cannot have any excuses for that. Um, then there is always someone who will take a chance with you. And also, there are a lot of international photo editors, and I'm sure in whichever field you are looking at, there will be equivalent, people in hiring positions also, who are female. And I've realized that a lot of female photo editors, they they kind of, like, try to give more opportunities to other women as well. you know um I don't know whether consciously or unconsciously they do try that. And also, there are men who take chances, so um you will find, one or two or three, or, I mean, you'll find at least one person who will take a chance with you, and that one chance is enough. There you kind of really prove that you can do good work. And then, as I said, always good work will lead to more good work. And then what happens is, to a lot of photographers, male or female, they stagnate, because they are too married to that one particular, style or philosophy or whatever they are stuck with. And they don't change with the times. Like, you have to kind of, like, you have to have your ear to the ground, know what are how is the media shifting, how is, how are people consuming media, how are editors, people getting hired. All those kind of things you need to be sensitive towards, and you always have to keep upping your skills. Like in my case, for example, with I used to work with Lonely Planet magazine for nearly a decade. And it's always used to be, like, the fanciest trips, like, to say, to Kenya or Australia or somewhere, used to be given to the male photographer, and I used to be the only female photographer in their team. Everybody was freelancers, but everybody were from Bombay, or, or even from Delhi. I was the only South Indian photographer who was working with them, and I was the only female. And but even with their case, when there were assignments where they had to do, when they have to photograph sharks underwater in the open sea, no one else had that skill, because I was certified. I had done all the training for scuba diving. I was qualified to do that. I had the equipment, everything. So then they had no other choice but to hire me, right? So their gender has no role really. Like, it basically comes down to who has the skills to execute this job. And if you have that skill, then you stop being a woman. You become just this photographer who is able to deliver that. So yeah, so that is what has worked for me. If I say no, I'm a woman photographer and therefore magically commissions have to come to me, that will never work. um so yeah, so that is that. And then um I do also make, like, I used to be, I think maybe even now, like, I will refuse to kind of travel overnight in a bus to some strange place, etc. Because I would give more priority to my safety. And I'm like, if I have to travel somewhere, I have to travel by during the day. I would mostly take flights. I mean, so, a lot of photo editors, used to also think that I'm snooty or, like, all of that, etc. But then for those things I used to put my foot down also. Okay, so if you want to cut down on your costs and you want to cut down on your travel costs, then you go with a male photographer who's willing to do all that. I'm not willing to do that. But if you hire me, you get the quality, you get what you have hired me for. So these kind of negotiations will constantly happen. And yeah, and you also shouldn't be taking anything for granted. You do your job well, and that is good enough. And there is always someone who will take a chance with you. You have to get your portfolio the in the best possible shape you can. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Now, we are about to wind up, but before that, students, the platform is open to you. So if you want to ask Jyothy any questions, you just raise your hands, come up, and please feel free to ask questions. Do you have any questions, by the way? Mohit, Teja, Shailesh, please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Hi, Jyoti.
Hello.
Hi. The part that you talked about where you kind of have to find the balance between your work life and your personal life, and that sometimes gets in the way. That part really hit me hard. Where I actually want, like, here most of us are students, and that part really scares me, that you have to, yeah, you gotta work, you'll have to struggle, you'll have to put in a lot of hours initially. But how do you recognize that, okay, this is the part where I need to stop, and I need to take a break, and find the time for my personal projects? Because that's the initial motivator. Because if you're working for someone, I don't think you'll always find what you love. You gotta do some works for that you won't find as interesting,
Hmm.
and if that piles up, that's gonna bog you down a lot. So
Right.
how do you manage that?
So okay, so I didn't manage to do that. That that was my
Okay.
story. But I think if I could go back in time, I would be more
Mhm.
strategic about what assignments I did.
Okay.
So I wasn't. I think I didn't think long term in that sense. I realized this only after my health broke down. Until then I was like just running around like a mad rabbit. But so um, what you could do is
Mhm.
to uh, find do projects where you get better funding, right? Like, say for example, instead of doing low paying 100 editorial shoots. Like, I mean, are you a photographer, Mohit?
No, I'm not a photographer. Like, we are students. I'm still learning, but yeah,
Okay,
I
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, whatever stream that you decide to specialize in, whether photography, design, whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
But uh, I think you can always find a balance where there are certain projects you do so that you get um, um, your name is recognized, and I don't like to use the word exposure because that is what often people
Yep.
say to give free work done.
Yep.
But I used to have this sort of logic where
Mm-hmm.
I never worked for free. Actually, now I'm working for free. Now I'm volunteering with a climate change organizations, which my friends have founded. But that
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with, and I'm in a comfortable position in terms of finances, so I'm okay with, and I know these people. I know they are not really, scamming people. Therefore, I'm okay. But before, what I used to do was I would say that, okay, you have 100 rupees, you have 500 rupees to pay me. You give me that. You don't have to pay me like a lot of money. I will do that. But it was just like just a courtesy, just to say that you respect my time and you respect the work that I'm doing and you pay me that. I had that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, no, but aside from that, I think you can strategically do work. Like, say, for example, wedding photography. Like, so many photographers used to do wedding photography. And I think it is smart to do wedding photography also. Because if finances are a constraint that you have, then
Mm-hmm.
one wedding photography can give you 1 or 2 months of time, right? Or more. I don't know now what are the rates, etc. But you can find that time to do your personal project. Then again, after you have found your personal project and you want to work on it, look for grants, look for funding that will enable you to do all these personal projects. And these things will not happen overnight also, right? Like, it also takes practice. This grant writing, pitching, all of this takes practice, and it takes that
Yep. Yep.
time. So you have to yourself, first of all, give, mentally you have to tell, okay, I need it. I will take, 6 months or even a year or even 2 years to kind of really get my foot off the ground. And
Mm-hmm.
until then, you have to be really strategic, like, not, work without a plan and just saying yes to everything. You start saying no, and then focus on, and then find a good mentor. Like, that is very, very key, I think.
Yep.
Again, something that I missed out on. Yeah, like, if you have a good mentor, that itself will really, like, guide you and help you grow, etc. And then when you produce good work, then money will automatically follow. Money, success, whatever it is, your definition of success, whatever that is, that will follow. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, I was saying, at least you'll have a lot of food that you wouldn't want to. I mean, I don't know if you can really escape that. But being at a point, as you said, being successful, I'll say at a point where I don't have to think of money, but I could just do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like you talked about the narrative photography. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not something in India that's really popular, but you did it anyway because you like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, creating that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's that's
Yeah.
that's something I wanna achieve. By the way, how did you get that grant? Like, what was the journey? Can you briefly explain that? How did you get into National Geographic?
I haven't really gotten into that. I mean, I don't work for National Geographic.
No.
It's just a grant that allows you to do whatever project. And honestly, it's not any different from pitching any project to any channel or any editor. uh,
Mm-hmm.
they have so if you go to National Geographic's website, you will find that they have certain key focus areas, that they are giving grants out for. So rainforest might be one of that. Plastic, oceans and plastics is one of that. So they have like various categories. And for storytellers, they give out certain grants. And I think for conservationists, they have some other grants. For scientists, they have some other grants, etc., etc. So yeah, like, I actually never used to apply for any of these grants or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because, again, like, yeah, again, because I'm so focused on just producing. And I've gotten into this, like, comfort zone where I have clients, or I have people who I know will take my work and who likes the kind of stories that I do, and I kind of work with them. So I've gotten into this comfort zone. And then later on, actually, they had asked me. I had met editors from National Geographic at some festival, at the Indian Photo Festival, actually, and they had asked me to. They invited me to apply for the grant because they were looking for people to fund,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and they came across my work and they asked me to apply for the grant, and I applied with the next project that I wanted to do, and they gave me the grant. Yeah. So
Nice, nice.
yeah, so yeah, I mean, and I was like, oh, I should have done this like some time back.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, it's not, if you really like working in the industry, it's not like, now working with National Geographic is any different in any different normally, but the name has a lot of value, and that brand recognition,
Yep, yep.
etc. And even like access to stories is much easier, so that way it was good. And they're also very nice people, so yeah, so that's how that happened. Yeah, but Mohit, I also wanted to tell you, like, don't think of things that, like, projects as something that you don't want to do. That that will make things much more harder. Yeah,
I
there's
get
always
that
something that you
confirmation bias there. Yeah.
can. No, because there's always something that you can learn with. Even the most boring jobs, there is something you can
Hmm.
always learn from. So yeah, you can think of it that way. Yeah.
Ah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good takeaway from that. You can always learn good from that. Like, there's always something to take away from there. Cool, cool. Thank you for that.
No worries. Yeah.
Yeah, that was from
Hello.
me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, it's Alicia audible.
Yes.
Hi, Jyothy. Like, I was like wondering. Actually, I've been through your portfolio, like your website, and I was like amazed at the thing. You have been to Maldives and you have come through that devilfish. So, I like. Did you people plan for that, or like it came out of like nowhere or something? Like because that was an interesting click, actually.
Oh, the manta rays.
Yeah, the Manta Rays, sorry.
Yeah. No, that we had gone for. That was a migration period for manta rays. So, so that was on an assignment for Lonely Planet magazine, and yeah, these things we plan according to when there are higher chances of seeing a certain species, etc. Because it's also expensive to go and shoot and do all these things, right? So they plan to the last T. But of course, I mean, finally when you're there, it all comes down to your luck also. Like, you could really have bad luck and not see anything, so that's also possible. But yeah, we got lucky.
And also there's an upcoming documentary of yours. I've seen that it's like coming soon. So can you just tell me like what's the documentary about? Like how it is gonna be or something?
Yeah, no, the one on my website, that's the one that Mahesh was asking about.
I
It's
think
called
we
When the
yeah
Ice
we she
Melts.
spoke about it. That's the When Ice Melts documentary. That is what is upcoming right now.
Okay. So I thought like you asked for a different documentary. Sorry,
No,
sorry
that's
for
the
that.
same thing. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Um, is there any other
Yeah.
questions? Yeah.
Any other questions, students? Anything else? Anyone else? That's it. So, Jyoti, thanks a lot. It was an amazing conversation. We actually learned a lot, and it was very productive. I hope for all the students, they have learned a lot from your journey. And thanks, again. Thanks for coming. I know, I mean, like you have been. And, what is the time there right now?
It's past 4 in the evening.
Okay, right, all right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, and
Cool.
it was
Yeah.
really good
Thanks.
to have you.
Thanks for having me. You can, I mean, any of you guys, if you want to get in touch, you can always get in touch. My email ID is contact@jyothikarat.com. Or I'm also on Instagram. Clubhouse, I don't really know how to use, but I know how to use Instagram. So
Now you know.
Instagram
Now
is
you
much,
know. It's okay.
yeah, now I'm kind of learning. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, Instagram or emails are better. Yeah,
Right.
cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Shailesh,
Jyoti. Thank you, Mahesh sir. Thank you, Mohat. Thank you, Teja, for being here. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next weekend. Have a
Bye.
great day. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Jyoti, again, once again.
Bye bye.
Have a great evening. Good evening.
Yeah.